speakers to come back on webcam can obviously come off mute as the questions come in, and we'll act as a panel for everybody now. Vince, if you want to come on as well off webcam. What we will do is, if you have a question, you can specifically put it to a member of one of the speakers on the panel, or you can just generally ask it and anyone can jump in. If nobody knows, Alva will answer it, okay? If it's technical. So we will we'll invite you to take questions now. One that came in actually on a serious note to Alva, and thanks very much for your message there, is Alva, what do you eat on that small budget?
Very good one. So I saw people were looking for a bit of clarification. So it's £100 from me, £100 from my partner, so £200 total monthly. Honestly, our staples are our best rice, loads of veggies on discount. We always tend to run to the store at 7 p.m. and then they go for like basically nothing. But yeah, best rice. We don't really eat meat, which saves a lot. We don't drink any alcohol, which saves a lot. So if you think about it, rice, potatoes, pasta, throw some veggies in the mix and a nice sauce. And in that way, you can fairly easily cook for £200 a month if you mix a few little shops in there every 2 weeks.
Cool. That's interesting. Okay. And guys, if anyone else actually has any follow-on questions, I'm going to go back through the chat here. So, okay, there's one here from Andrew directed to Garome. Was the UK tax advantaged investment accounts, SIB and ISA, a way of speeding up FIRE?
Yeah, of course. It's it's only when you look at other countries you kind of realise just how good it is in the UK. Yeah. So we had, you know, I said about my brother-in-law teaching us about money. The first thing he told us to do was try and find all of our old pensions. So we did that, pulled them all together into a SIP, and that helped. But I was my own worst enemy, I think, with the SIP initially, because I was doing so many wonderful things with that and not really just homing in on something simple and straightforward. But yeah, ISAs and SIPs all the way has been really helpful. And for me, looking forward, it's going to be really complicated around our tax status. So we've still got money that I would like to get into ISAs, and we can put £20,000 in each every year. So we'll be able to put £20,000 in April, but we've still got more from the sale of our house, basically. And it sounds like money bags, but from the sale of our house, we've still got a lot of cash. So we want to get that sheltered, but we're going to lose our ISA ability once we are no longer effectively resident in the UK. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge to work out. That's where I'll be talking to my brother-in-law again.
Love it. No, that's great. And we have a question in here. Crystal asking yourself about the 363 rule of banking. Money is a product, buy low, sell high. If the loan rate is less than the rate of return, it might be a good entry point for P2P. If it's generally low, to minimize the risk. I think that's more of a statement. There's one here. Hi, Aoife. Aoife, is there IE bank account similar to the ISA in the UK?
To my knowledge, ISAs are a product quite specific to the UK, so I actually don't know very much about them. I think an English person will be able to answer this. Dave, is an ISA like a high interest savings account or something?
Well, actually, I'll give my input on that, but actually,
yeah, so maybe not the right person to ask that question.
Well, an ISA basically is a specific account. It's like it's an advantageous savings account, an ISA account in the UK specific. But to go Neil will come in there, and I think that certain ones allow for a certain amount to be input per year. And yeah, Neil, can you come in on that? It's UK specific, isn't it?
Yeah. So is that the ISA or the SIP?
ISA.
For ISA, it's really straightforward. The ISA means that you can put in £20,000 each into your ISA each year. the problem with ISAs, and this is something that really frustrates me about just education on money, is you've got stocks and shares ISAs and you've got cash ISAs. So people have got all this 20 grand that they can put away, and everyone you talk to, they're going, yeah, cool, yeah, I've got an ISA, I've stuck it straight in my cash ISA and I'm earning 0.00% whatever. So stick it in the stocks and shares ISA and use it that way. Yeah. That's what we do.
Perfect. Okay. There's a question came in here from Alex from fiuk.org to everyone. Do any of you have any examples of mental health challenges you faced, and any ideas to improve your mental health during the fire slog, what we're in at the moment? Anyone can address that?
All I would say is I live a lot in my head. So in my head, I set up little systems for myself. So that what I said about being a hero and the buckets, they're just two. I had lots of these little things that I had, and it meant that every day got a bit easier. But I'm not going to pretend that mental health is an easy subject to work on, because as I said, I had issues last year, and it was one of those things that I thought I'll never suffer with issues like that, and it was tough. So I can't really give an answer on that.
Interesting. Does anybody else want to comment on that?
Best thing specifically to fire I could comment is that it has given me major relief to have basically so many funds available to not be fucked around by any, if I may say so, by any employers or other organizations, and be able to decide myself what to do, because that has definitely caused anxiety for me in the past, where, say, for example, I was about to run out of cash at the end of the month, or afraid I would miss a shift for whatever reason, and knowing that's no longer an issue really does help. And what I can specifically say for myself, I used to have a very narrow-minded mindset if it came to money, spending money. Scarcity mindset is the best way of phrasing it. And fire has taught me to relive the value of money, but also learning to enjoy spending it again on a nice dinner, which this community, just many conversations I've had with people in it, has basically taught me that. So yeah, it has massively helped me, at least.
Awesome. It's a very topical subject, I think, mental health, and I don't think anyone pretends to be a mental health expert here at all, although maybe some people are qualified if on the call this time of the evening. But I think from my own perspective anyway, I talk a lot about mental well, I spoke on your podcast there, Financial Independence, on New Year's Day, Alva, on Stay Mentally Sane in 2021. And I think it's topical because from my own perspective anyway, I think everyone's mental health has been challenged in the last year. And when you're in a 2-kilometer radius of travel and you're away from friends and family and all the job losses, I think it's probably more so now for people who are coming in that are actually looking at that stuff. But I do think, from my own perspective anyway, when you start looking at, I think Ethan said it, when you look at the end goal and you reverse engineer really lifestyle design, I think a lot of that mental health stuff is eradicated, and you start to build the life on your own terms. And I think Neil said it as well. He said some of the stuff I put on my slides, I'd be shot and sacked anyway if I did that in my job, but I'm free to do it now. So yeah, that's my own personal view anyway. We have more messages coming in here, guys. Okay, so there's one here from Peter Crowley. Thank you, you're an inspiration. You're very good speakers. My questions are, do you have kids? Are you based in UK? And didn't you pay deemed disposal on ETFs? So I'm not sure who that was actually addressed to. Do you have kids? Deemed disposal on ETFs? Possibly that was you, Alva, was it? Did you have kids?
I do not have kids. Which question was that?
It's just popped out actually, so I will have to go back to that one. We'll come back to that one. There is, okay, so it says here that, Andrew, a question for Tugo Rome. Do you mind sharing which Vanguard ETFs you invested in? Yeah, that's a specific question.
Okay, so it's a little, our finances are a bit complicated at the moment because I've got an old defined benefit scheme that I've worked hard to get out of, and still fighting hard to get hold of it. So that's kind of safe. So if we look at ETFs on the perspective of equities and bonds, I look at my defined benefit pension really as a bond until it's no longer a defined benefit pension when I get it out. Also, my last employer, the pension there was kind of split in two, and part of it was like a cash fund. So I put those two together and see them as a bond. So at the moment, in my mind, that's a bond, and everything else is invested in VWRL at present. So once I get my hands on all of that money, we'll probably get a nice car. No, I'm joking. But once I get my hands on all of that money, then we may well shift out of VWRL and just go into a life strategy, or keep a proportion of VWRL. I'm actually thinking about, so I'm interested in, if anyone's got an expertise on this, I'm thinking about, from my risk perspective, so I think generally people would say we should be kind of 60-40 equity bonds. I would like to be kind of 70-30. So for me, the obvious thing feels like going into life strategy 60 with 50% and life strategy 80 with 50%. And that way I've got life strategy 70. But if I've got that wrong and I'm an idiot, then I'd love it if someone would tell me. Yeah, so I'll just see the question, what is VWRL? So yeah, it's basically, yeah, it's heavily weighted to America on the basis that America has got the vast majority of the biggest companies in the world, but it's extremely well diversified globally fund. And if it means anything, J.L. Collins, if he was in Europe, he would be going VWRL. It's good enough for me.
Fantastic. No, that's a great answer. And what we'll do is we have one here for for Aoife. Aoife, is there PRSI and USC payable on P2P profits, or is it just PAYE? Do you know?
To my knowledge, and again, I always say everybody's tax circumstances are different, but so far, according to my research, and I am not a tax accountant, is that peer-to-peer gains fall under, this is in Ireland, fall under the capital gains tax bracket. So currently, as of Irish revenue rules, you can earn €1,270 a year tax-free from a capital gain, which is selling a painting, selling a car, selling your vintage handbag. And like if something is tax-free, I'm first in the queue. But it's actually, maybe it's just because I'm just a bit nerdy, but sometimes reading through a tax return can be quite enlightening, and it can tell you all of the ways that you can earn, and it might even just spark something off in your mind. It's like, oh, I could earn this much from this tax-free, so why am I not doing it? But a gain is only a gain when it's realized, and that's a kind of an accounting expression. So I didn't realize the gain doesn't mean, oh, I didn't notice that money was in my bank account. It just, when the gain is realized is when the money actually hits your account, whether you do something else with it within 30 seconds of it hitting your bank account. But the minute you withdraw a gain, even if it's only resting in your bank account for 22 seconds, that is technically a realized gain. But what you declare to the revenue is between you and your conscience. But I recommend getting expert advice, because everybody's circumstances are different, and there might be a way of, well, if I take the credits from my husband or my partner, or I moved this and I sold a house yesterday and I didn't, so it's, everybody's circumstances are different.
Perfect. There is a number of other questions, and we can keep going around. Does anyone have I'm hosting here, so I missed some of the questions I was presenting. Does anyone specifically have any questions for myself? Okay, I'll give people a chance. In regards to, what have we got here? To go Rome, this is from Aidan Damer. Do you think you will ever settle anywhere again when you have had enough of traveling?
So we really don't know. I think it's probably highly unlikely to be Western Europe. I said in the presentation that because you only get a couple of weeks holiday, there are places that you just won't visit. So there's places on our list which we're really excited to visit. We were on a call the other week talking about this and everyone was laughing, but places like Gdansk, Plovdiv in Bulgaria, help me,
Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires, yeah, but I think about the less Albania, Kosovo. There's all these kind of places we can't wait to get to, and we probably will settle somewhere, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's Georgia or Kosovo or something like that. I hope so. I'd like to think we'd do something a bit interesting, so maybe.
Interesting. I was actually looking at Georgia the other day out of interest on YouTube. They've got a really high, like the cost of living is, the standard of living is really high and the cost of living is really low, correct? There's actually a guy I was looking at online, believe it or not, the Nomad capitalist. I think he's got a property in Georgia. So I only touching on this briefly, but am I right about that?
Yeah, exactly that.
But the weather's not great, right? Is it?
Yeah, but well, this is part of the reason why we want to be nomadic, really. So there are times of the year. So if you look at this from a normal travel perspective, I know you were talking about where we're going to settle, but normally in the summer, people are going to Spain, Portugal, Greece, places like that, which obviously that's a high cost time to visit those kind of locations. Now, for us, in the summer, we'll probably go to a place like Georgia because the weather will be lovely, and it's not a tourist center. And in our winter, that's when, as Sarah mentioned, Buenos Aires. We'll be in South America or Southeast Asia or something like that.
Cool. Okay. Perfect. There's a couple more questions here, guys. By the way, if anyone wants to drop off, any of the speakers need to drop off. We totally understand. So there's an email came in from Isabella, and a couple of questions. Anyone can take these. In order to avoid the 8-year roll-up tax rule on ETFs, is it advisable to purchase stocks listed in high dividend, yield dividend ETFs individually and keep them, and obviously use the dividends for income and maybe slowly selling them off as stock as required? That's probably a good one for maybe, well, Alva's not Irish based, but maybe Vince, would you be able to take that one? Vince is on mute, I think. Can you hear us, Vince? I'll just unmute you there. Okay, we'll come back. Another question, guys, here was, should I pay my mortgage off? Well, this is a specific question, so we will just comment around this, but question is, should I pay my mortgage off before I start investing, or should I keep my mortgage and invest the money instead of clearing it off? I'm 32, I can clear the mortgage in 2 years. I don't have, if I don't invest in stocks. Given there may be a market readjustment for COVID in the next 2 years, am I better off to spend those 2 years clearing the mortgage and start investing when there's a drop? Now, before anyone takes that, my own personal view on that is that you can't time the market, and that's probably a personal decision. The old debate is, should I invest? If you can, should I invest and make money, or do I clear my debt and own my house outright? Obviously, we don't actually advise, but what's people's own personal opinion?
A fair question, Dave. And I think in the end, it's a comparison between what do you go for? We don't know the interest rate he's paying, but let's say it's 2.5%. Do you go for a guaranteed 2.5% payoff, or do you go for a potential average of 7% in the stock market? What do you feel most comfortable with? I think that's the best way of approaching it. And as you said, fully personal. Myself, I would invest, but that's my choice, and me still being in the accumulation phase, and by that it being logical. But if I would have a number of millions in the bank, or a million, or I would already be close to fire, I would probably pay off the house if I already had enough cash for my fire plans just to be done with it. I don't know how others think about it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one as well, Alvar. It's a very personal choice, I believe. Some people don't like to have that over their heads, right? So you get a little bit more financial freedom by paying off that mortgage and having it out of the way, and then start saving then and getting that money into investments. That would be my choice as well. But then again, I'm getting up there, right, in age. So to have that out of the way would be a big plus for me. Now, I think if you're younger, maybe, and you have a lower interest rate, and you can afford that, and that it's not going to become a burden on you, then yes, I would say keep it going at that point and get started investing. But again, very, very personal choice, I believe.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. And I think there's, I've got my own views on this, but I think that some people argue that when you walk down the garden into the house, it feels very different under your feet when you actually own it than the bank own a portion of it. But again, it's a different answers.
And Dave, can you ask that question again that you had asked me before, if you still have it there? I was at the wrong settings on.
Yeah, apologies, Vince. I'll come back to the question. So the question was, in order to avoid 8-year roll-up tax on ETFs, so this obviously applies outside the pension because that's tax-free. So this would be like through DiGiro or whatever. Is it advisable to purchase stocks listed in a high-yield dividend ETF individually and keep them using the dividends as income and slowly over time selling off the stock as required?
It'll be tough. It'll be hard to do, because if you think about it, like an ETF, let's say an all-world ETF, they essentially purchase percentages of stocks in hundreds, if not thousands of companies. So in order for you to replicate that, you would have to actually buy, for those same companies, a percentage of that stock as well, right? And not only that though, but you would have to also track it on a regular basis. You weed out the ones that are no longer in that ETF and then purchase new ones. So there's transactional costs there. Now that deemed disposal, that's that 8-year deemed disposal, that only applies to ETFs, by the way. So if you're getting into stock, you do have the advantage of being able to put your losses against one stock against the wins of another stock, right? You don't have that with ETFs, but you do have that deemed disposal disadvantage, all right, as well. The only reason that I stick with ETFs is because you're allocating your money across hundreds, if not thousands, of companies, so they're less volatile, right? And what I'm looking for is a steady growth, consistent money getting paid into it, consistent purchases, and then steady growth, and then build on that compound growth then from there. I'm not sure if I answered that question 100%, but please do follow up with other questions if you have something.
Yeah, perfect. No, that makes sense. And I know that in some of those ETF portfolios, there's hundreds and thousands of stocks, and to keep up with all of the individual financial reports and all those different things. But then the argument is obviously for the tax efficiency of using stock. What we might do is we might switch now for the final bit there just to each other, and we can actually ask each other questions on the call, and then we'll actually finally wrap up, guys.
Ask yourself a question, Dave. You mentioned regarding real estate returns that 7-8% or so is kind of what you were expecting. Like as a minimum, if I recall correctly. But if you compare it to the stock market, 7 on average, which is basically the same, why do you still pick real estate over that with the risks it comes with against an ETF?
Yeah, good question. So this is my own personal property strategy, as I said. First of all, that's my estimation. My estimation is a 7 to 8% return on average outside Dublin, not a minimum. I'd be shooting for 11 to 13. I'd be looking for a higher return than 7 to 8%. But I'd also structure my portfolio that it can take a 50% reduction in rental yield. But yeah, you could get a 7 to 8% yield over 7 to 10 years in the stock market is the argument, right? And your dollar cost averaging. And as Vince was saying, you buy ETFs, which is kind of passive investing through everything. And you mentioned what VRL and all that. But for property, for me, as I said, you leverage 30%, you're getting your 8 to 13%, well, more 11 to 13 if you're kind of a more savvy investor in property. And but that 8% return as an ROI, I mean, you've got to put a lot of money into the stock market to get the cash flow return that, for example, if you're going for a high dividend yield portfolio and you're on, you've got to put a lot of money in and build a big portfolio to cash flow straight away. So for me, it's just a case of yeah, put it into property. And you talk about risk and stuff as well. There's ways to mitigate risk in property. So the first one is again, diversification. There's different things you can do. I've got friends there that use long-term LTL, which is basically long-term lease in Ireland. It's quite pretty hands-off. You can get management companies involved. But then at the same time, the more properties you own, you're mitigating risk. And a funny argument that I had with someone was, what's more risky? Is it to have, let's say, 6 or 10 properties rented out? Who's more exposed? Or to have one rental property? Well, clearly the argument is the one rental property, because if it's a vacancy or you have an issue, and by the way, 99% of people are generally good in my opinion, but you do get, but you've got to mitigate that risk. But if you've got 10 rental properties or 8 rental properties or 20 rental properties, well, something happens to one of them, you've got 19. So, but yeah, it's just that you get the money now and you're more in control than, you know, it's just a different market. That's my view.
One little follow-up question on that. That 8%, is that cash on cash, or is that on the total value of the property?
No, my argument is that outside, my viewpoint is outside of Ireland, you can get an ROI of 8% gross. And that's whether that's just as an average, 7 to 8%, and that's before you take out, same as the stock market, because you've still got to take, if you're doing your drawdown, you've still got to allow for inflation, what average 2%, and you take out your fees and stuff, depending who you're with. But yeah, no, that's 7 to 8%. But if you're just buying single properties and you've got your finger on the pulse, you can get 11, 12, 13% easily. Yeah, it's just Google the highest rental yield in a property in Europe, and I think Ireland is like 3rd or 4th.
Thank you.
And if you're buying bulk, you can get way better deals. But you got to have cash on hand then. If you buy like 20, 50 properties in a row, you can get way higher ROI. Anyone else?
Dave, what's your thoughts on buying property through auctions like BidX?
My own personal view is that in Ireland, it's, well, BidX actually is not just in Ireland, it's in Spain, I think Spain, UK, Ireland, and I think somewhere else, I can't remember. You can,
South Africa, isn't it, I think?
South Africa, yeah. So my viewpoint on that is that some people, especially in the current climate, are buying cold without actually seeing it. When I say cold, I mean they're not warm, they're not actually visiting the property, which is pretty risky. Secondly, I look at BidX quite a lot of the properties actually will say this has not been internally inspected and it's just for resale. So they do provide the legal pack, and you want a good engineer to have a look at the property. Certainly wouldn't be buying cold or blind, sorry, is the phrase, in this current climate without having a look at it, because we're in a level 5 lockdown at the moment. You probably can get a good deal on BidX or UBid, sorry, or any of these sites, I think, and you can turn the property around quickly. So you can actually own the property with keys within like 30 days. And in Ireland, it's so slow to physically deal with property and auctioneers, and the process is so drawn out. So go in eyes open. I would never say no to anything, but and I watch it regularly. But there's a lot of tenanted properties on there, which people may not want to take on. And there's a lot of, yeah, I would just say, do your due diligence, whatever you do. But I am aware it's a fast way to get a property. You can get a property in like 30, 45 days there. Legal packs all pre-done, contracts exchanged, but I'd be very careful.
One other question on that too. Sorry, I don't want to keep going on about property, but how about REITs and buying them through a leveraged strategy to simulate the same risk or returns as you could get with property? So say I buy a REIT ETF on 2x leverage to like, because normally if you buy a property, you can put on like a 30-40% deposit, 60% of the cash comes from the bank. What if you simulate similar risk level or loan level through leverage? Would that be something you would ever consider, or are you like, nah, that's playing too fancy then?
Yeah, you can do. I probably need to look into it more. There is the old saying, and it's quite common in maybe less European, it's more UK and Irish, is to own bricks and mortar. It kind of encouraged to own your own property and actually physically see it. There is a saying that what you can't see, you physically can't feel, or whatever it is. But I'm not opposed to any of this stuff. I think at the end of the day, the reason I own property is I'm pretty much in control of my investments. I feel I can pop out and visit it, but I'm not opposed to looking at REITs and leverage. Is that a case of that you maybe put 30% down and it's equal to that portion, or how would you work in terms of leverage? What's the proposal there?
There are two ways. You can either buy an ETF that works. It's basically just leveraged, and what it does, it just basically moves double on what the market does. So if the market goes up by 10, you go up by 20, but the other way around too. If it drops by 20, you drop by 40. And the other option would be through a margin loan from your broker by using your portfolio as collateral, and basically getting, say you got a 100K portfolio, you get a 50K loan from your broker, but you pay an interest rate over it. You invest it, and then you pay, say, 1% interest over the 50K, but you make 6% a year, and the difference is yours. Those are the two ways I understand you could do that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something I might explore. I think you're still at the mercy of the stock market, and you might argue that I'm at the mercy of the property market, but I'm at the mercy of the property market on a personal level. I can directly influence something. If you're into REITs and stuff, you are just taking what happens. So if that makes any sense.
Certainly, and the risk with that is if it happens to drop up to beyond the value of your initial investment, you could lose it all. So it is it's very dangerous.
Cool. All right. Well, look, guys, it's 9:35. If anyone has a final comment or final question, otherwise I'm going to wrap this up in a minute. Cool.
Like I said, thank you so much for organizing all of this. I know this has taken many hours. Really enjoyed it, and thank everybody for coming together. I learned a few good bits today.
Perfect. All right. And what we'll do, just to wrap up, guys, as I said, we're at the end of the Fire HQ event tonight. A massive thank you to all the speakers, everyone in the background, everyone involved, and all of you guys for actually giving up your Saturday evening to listen to us. We will all sleep well this evening, and I encourage you all to reach out to any of the speakers and myself directly. You can email at info@firehq.ie or facebook.com/firehq.ie. If you want to avail of any of the offers, promotions, deals, contacts, whatever it is, from attending today's events, just contact any of the speakers directly at their online presence. Thanks very much, and we'll call it a day. Bye-bye. Good evening.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks, Dave. All right.